You know, what if we've got mental toughness all wrong? What if it's not about these huge, epic battles of willpower? Seriously, what if the most resilient people you know are built not in some big moment of crisis, but through tiny, almost invisible habits they do every single day? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. We're pulling back the curtain on the quiet practices that build a truly unbreakable mind.
I mean, we've all seen this, right? The exact same challenge hits two different people. For one person, it's completely derailing. But the other, they adapt, they overcome. So what's the difference there? It's definitely not about just being born with more grit. The real secret, it turns out, is in a set of habits that are way more subtle and accessible than you'd ever imagine.
And this right here perfectly captures the big misunderstanding. We tend to picture mental strength as this heroic, brute force struggle. But the real, sustainable kind of resilience, it looks a lot more like the column on the right. It's the quiet, consistent act of nurturing your mind, day in and day out. Think of it less like trying to weather a hurricane and more like tending to a garden.
So first, we've got to dismantle a really common but pretty harmful idea, this myth of invincibility. This is that belief that being strong just means powering through everything, no matter what it costs you personally.
Just think about how often we hear things like, oh, just get over it, or don't be so emotional. That whole approach, just bottling up our feelings, isn't a sign of strength at all. It's like building a really fragile dam that's just destined to burst when the pressure gets high enough. Real mental strength isn't about not having feelings, it's about learning how to process them effectively.
Okay, so if just suppressing our emotions is a totally flawed strategy, then what's the alternative? Well, the answer is to build your resilience from the inside out, using the power of what we're calling quiet habits.
And it's so important to understand what we mean by this. These aren't grand gestures. We're not talking about meditating for an hour a day or suddenly running a marathon. Nope, they are small, intentional actions. You can think of them like mental push-ups. Doing just one doesn't make you strong, but if you practice them consistently, day after day, they build incredible mental fortitude over time.
True resilience is forged not in a single fire, but in the daily tempering of the mind. This quote it absolutely nails it. See, resilience isn't really about surviving one big crisis. It's the result of a daily process of conditioning your mind, gently but consistently, to be more flexible and more durable.
All right, let's break this down into a few practical things, starting with habits for your mindset. These practices are all about rewiring your internal world, basically changing how you think before you try to change what you do.
And this first one, it's a total game changer. It's called practicing objective observation. Now, that might sound a little complex, but in practice, it's actually incredibly simple. Here's how it works. You just strip away the emotional story you're telling yourself and focus only on the hard facts. So your brain's dramatic story might be, this is a total disaster, my boss definitely hates me. But the objective fact is simply, my boss noted 3 areas for improvement in my report. And in that tiny gap between the story and the fact, that's where you find the power to choose a calm, rational response instead of a panicked reaction. Okay, next up is a habit that, well, a lot of us find incredibly difficult, but it is absolutely essential for bouncing back from failure. And that is cultivating self-compassion. Now, this isn't about making excuses for yourself or having a pity party. Not at all. It's about ending that nasty habit of being your own worst critic. So when you mess up, your internal voice shouldn't be screaming, you're such an idiot. It should be more like, wow, that was a tough situation and you did your best. So what can we learn from this? That approach actually builds you up, whereas self-criticism, it just tears you down. So we've covered the internal mindset. Now, let's shift gears and talk about habits for your actions. How you can translate these new ways of thinking into tangible, real-world practices. This one, honestly, this might be my personal favorite because it is such a powerful weapon against procrastination and that feeling of being overwhelmed. It's called shrink the change. So instead of thinking, ugh, I need to write this entire 10-page report, you shrink it down to, I will open a new document and just write 1 sentence. Or instead of, I have to clean the whole house, it becomes, I will put 1 single dish in the dishwasher. I know, it sounds almost silly, but it works because it totally tricks your brain. There's no fear, there's no resistance, and what happens is that one tiny step almost always leads to the next one. All right, our final habit is probably going to sound a little counterintuitive, especially in our hyper-productive world. It's the habit of scheduling time to intentionally do nothing.
And just to be super clear, this is not about scrolling on your phone. This is about strategic rest. It could be as simple as sitting with a cup of tea and just looking out the window for 5 minutes, no other inputs. This lets your brain shift into what's called its default mode network, which is where it consolidates memories, processes information, and even makes creative connections. It is a vital practice for preventing burnout and restoring your mental energy.
Look, the power of these habits doesn't come from doing them once in a while. The real magic, the real transformation, happens through the compounding effect of practicing them daily. This progression really shows the power of consistency. On day 1, a new habit feels like a very intentional choice. After a week, yeah, it still takes some conscious effort, but after a month or so, it starts to become more automatic. And after a year, it's no longer just something you do. It's become a part of who you are. That is the incredible, transformative power of these small, quiet habits.
So to recap, building real mental resilience really boils down to these 4 core practices. Observe the facts, not the emotional story. Treat yourself with the same kindness you'd give a good friend. Make your progress so easy that it's almost impossible to resist. And finally, give your brain the quiet time it desperately needs to recover and recharge. But this isn't just about learning something new. It's about doing something with it. You don't have to try and master all of these at once. Just pick one. Which of these small, quiet habits feels like the one you need most in your life right now? Choose just one